and for noncompliance for RPS targets. In the bill, the CEC is responsible for adopting enforcement guidelines and noncompliance over the POUs and authorizes CARB for the assessment of these penalties. This bill just simply transfers that from CARB to CEC. My reasons for authoring this bill are simple: and to maintain the consistency, accountability, entity that oversees the program and determines violations under its regulations should be the same agency that sets the penalty. Under that note, I ask for your vote or your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have witnesses in support?
Yes, do we have? Yes, we do have witnesses.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Cindy Montañez on behalf of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and the City of LA, just to speak in strong support of this amendment. It's an amendment that we to the RPS program that we've been trying to work on for the entire year. We think it makes sense. It eliminates a duplicative enforcement policy and penalties that currently exist through the passage of SB 1X2. So I think it makes sense. It still maintains consistency, avoids duplicative process, and ultimately still holds the POUs accountable if we fail to meet our RPS targets. So we ask for your support.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Mr. Chair, members, Hugh Bauer on behalf of Burbank Water and Power. We also stand in support for many of the same reasons articulated by LADWP. We feel that the bifurcated enforcement process creates unnecessary complexity, and the process proposed in the bill does mirror the enforcement mechanism for IOUs with the PUC. With that, we ask for your support.
Okay. Thank you. Other witnesses in support? Seeing none, are there witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, members, Greg Cook, representing the Northern California Power Agency. We're strongly opposed to this bill. We think it dramatically changes a very important section of SB X12. And we believe it seriously violates the intent of SB X12 as it relates to public electric utilities. To be specific, we negotiated over almost a 3-year period on this legislation, and we supported SB 722, and we are supporting SB 23, and we did support SB X12. And we did so because we thought it was a realistic approach to how to handle the problem of public utilities that did not comply with the RPS requirement. First, it should be recognized that our members, each of the governing boards, are responsible and accountable for the compliance with the RPS bill. Each of our members has formally adopted that objective, and each of them is intent on meeting the 33% or exceeding the 33% requirement. This language would put us back in a situation that you may recall from some of the hearings earlier. We argued the potential for double jeopardy, where a publicly owned electric utility could be fined by the Energy Commission and fined later by the CARB for the same violation. Senate Bill X12 clarifies that problem, one, by having a single penalty authority, and number two, by stating in the law that there would be no double fine for the same violation. Another section of this bill, 1391, that causes us great concern is the openness of the funding, or of where the funds from the penalties would go. SB X12 is very clear. Any penalties assessed would go to the Air Resources Air Quality Control Fund, and those resources will be spent mitigating the issues in the community where the problem arose. That's very clear in current law. This bill says the money gets to go to the Energy Commission for enforcement of that section of the law, and also for administrative costs to enforce that thing. Now, we've recently been given a copy of a presentation by the Energy Commission regarding implementation of SB X12, and a problem that really jumped out at us says the bill requires the Public Utility the Energy Commission to adopt regulations specifying procedures for implementation by POUs. It doesn't do that at all. That far exceeds the intent or the letter of SB X12. So our concern is that this bill actually would result in a bounty hunting program. So the Energy Commission could put out regulations, penalize us for regulations that we believe exceed the current law, and use that to fund the ongoing activities of the Energy Commission. We respectfully urge a no vote on this bill. It's very important legislation. We worked very hard with Senator Simitian over the last 3 years. We're very pleased with the final result. We dramatically oppose this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, Assemblymember Bradford, before we entertain questions from the committee, would you care to respond to
I hear Mr. Cook's concerns, and I think we have addressed those in our presentation of this bill. Again, it streamlines the process. It eliminates the bifurcation of what currently exists with the RPS bill of having CARB implement the penalties and just moving the money back over to CEC and for the maintenance of the program and for the penalty section. And I think it should be under one roof, and that's what we're trying to do. And it only deals with the public-owned utilities, and I think it's straightforward on what we're trying to do instead of having two agencies do this. We're saying let's put it in one house. So.
Senator Strickland?
I just want to ask and clarify. So is it your testimony that says now you're having double jeopardy for the same fine?
We could have. We believe we would have that potential under AB 1391.
So you believe by passing this bill that then you would get fined by CARB as well as the Energy Commission for the same
correct.
violation?
We do believe that possibility exists, and we believe that Senator Simitian recognized that in SB X12 and clarifies it very clearly in that law now that could not happen.
Senator Berryhill, followed by Senator Smith.
So you're, as you see this, you see this as an incentive to fine.
We do see that, yes, sir. Thank you for that question. We definitely do see that possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Simitian.
Thank you. I'm going to be a no vote on the bill, but I want to give Assemblymember Bradford a little more credit than I think he's getting for weighing in on this issue. Look, we all know from doing this work, there's more than one way to structure a process like this. Ultimately, we came out with the process that was contained in SB2. That was the process we negotiated over a period of time. As you heard, you got a bunch of munis who are represented by NCPA who think that's the better process. That being said, LADWP has a different view of what the better process would be, and Assemblymember Bradford is here to make that case. There's more than one way to skin a cat. You just have to figure out which way you want to prefer. That being said, I will say I've got a little frustration because the provision that we're talking about was essentially asked for by LADWP about 3 years ago. So they've had a change of heart. I don't begrudge them that. I say this respectfully, but frankly, LADWP has presented a little bit of a moving target over the last 3 or 4 years. And part of that's the size and complexity. You've got a mayor, you've got a city council, you've got the LADWP organization, you've had change in staff. So what was somebody's point of view one day wasn't always their point of view the following day. And again, I don't say that critically. It's just been a little hard to negotiate with this moving target that is LADWP. But I do want members to know that the very piece that they now seek to remove is there at their behest in the first place. And I think Mr. Cook will remember the negotiations in just that way if I can return to him. So, my own view is there's no need to unring the bell at this point. I understand that some folks would like it one way, other folks would like it another way. I do think that it's probably important to note that there is some precedent here if we give CEC penalty authority for the first time, which we haven't done up till now, and that may or may not be cause for concern on the part of some. Mr. Cook's point is well taken. We did take language in the SB2 that said quite explicitly no double dipping on fines and penalties. That was a concern that was raised. That was certainly never the intent, and given the concern that was raised about it, we were happy to clarify that. But back to Mr. Bradford again, I just want to be clear. It's a perfectly reasonable approach that he's put forward. It's just some people like it one way, some people like it the other way. I'm happy to live with it the way it is, sort of feel like that's where we got. And I do have a little bit of concern about sort of rewarding the on-again, off-again, on-again, off-again support from LADWP on this particular provision, as well as the civil authority for fines that doesn't currently exist.
Other members of the committee? Senator DeSaulnier.
Just maybe for the author, the importance of doing the timing of this right now and the consequences of it as opposed to doing it in the next year. Forgive me for my since it was a long process and now we're amending it, and given what Mr. Simitian just said and my own reluctance
Mr. Chairman, if I
to
could
vote
just
for
mention,
bills unless there's a real urgency.
Go ahead.
Senator Assemblymember Bradford, who chairs the committee, knows we knew when we passed the bill unamended that there were going to be some lingering issues. I think that needs to be said in fairness to the Assembly member. The follow-on bill that I've got's got, I think, 15 different issues in it, and the goal there was to try and deal with things that were, quote, not controversial, end quote. This one clearly generated some controversy, so my view was, you know what, I don't want to put that, I wasn't inclined anyway, but I didn't want to put that in the bill, have the controversy there. I'm trying to keep the bill that I'm moving forward non-controversial. But whenever anybody has come and said, I've got a piece that I want to move, I've said, hey, I understand entirely if you're going to put it in another vehicle and have the debate on the merits, and that's what we're doing here, and that's as it should be, in my judgment.
Senator Pavley.
For clarification, because I understand the argument of putting it under one roof, appreciate the background and history, wasn't on the Energy Commission during the discussion of Senator Simitian's bill. Question is on the point of that perhaps both ARB and the Energy Commission could assess fines and penalties. Can that be cleaned up in some clarifying language?
Well, I believe that is what the current language is given Senator Simitian's bill from earlier in the year. In that bill, there was the language that addressed the quote-unquote double jeopardy. I think what some of the opposition has raised here today is the language of this bill may reopen that or may unclarify what's clear in current statute.
I just want to make sure that current statute was reflective and as I'm going.
So let me add maybe my 3 cents, not 2. First, let me echo some of the frustration articulated by Senator Simitian about wanting an early and repeated and consistent position and message from, frankly, what's my utility. And I know you and I have discussed that, Chairman Bradford. I got to believe there's a way, if there is a question or complication raised by the language of the bill before us, that moves away from the double jeopardy issue that we thought we put to bed with Senator Simitian's bill, and there's got to be a way to work that out, whether it's in the next committee on the floor, what have you. I know there's been deadlines, et cetera, et cetera. If somebody raised earlier in the conversation, well, we want an enforcement mechanism and finding authority and what happens with those funds, similar to what the IOUs have to go through under the PUC. I think the analysis raises the question of any funds collected through those penalties go currently to the general fund from IOUs. So if we're fining public-owned utilities for noncompliance, should those funds go to the general fund or not? If we're going to be consistent, that's just a policy choice. No right, no wrong, no good or bad, just a policy choice. Should this bill move forward? Again, I agree from a chaptering out standpoint. That's also an issue raised in the analysis. There's got to be to work that out either through this bill, through another bill, through a third vehicle. However that works out to me, that's technical. I'm willing to support the under one roof goal. That's what the essence of this bill is. But it's not just under one roof that's important. Under the current law, Energy Commission can find the POU not in compliance with the RPS mandates at the set milestone markers. And if it so chooses, and there's a penalty enforced, and the funds go not just to the ARB, but specifically to the, the Air Quality Something Fund. And I know that one of the many purposes of having an RPS, one of the many policy objectives we're trying to achieve, is AB 32 compliance. RPS is part of CARB's overall plan for achieving the AB 32 goals. But it's not the only goal of RPS. Some of it has been source diversity of where our electricity comes from. For some people, it's job creation. For some people, it's other reasons. So if there's going to be penalties imposed and monies collected for noncompliance with a renewable energy mandate, yet the money gets shifted to strictly an air quality improvement fund, I think that opens the door for an argument from the city of LA, from the utility, or any other POU to say, wait a minute, if it's about improving air quality, we have other ways of getting there. So I don't think we got to mix the policy objectives, as worthy as they all may be. So if it's monies generated for noncompliance with renewable energy, then the money ought to be reinvested in the renewable energy and achieving the renewable energy targets, and not shifting here, as related as those other policy issues may be, into another area. So that's the bulk of the reason why I'm supportive of the bill that Senator Bradford has before us today. Other questions or comments? Senator De Leon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm getting here a little late. I saw part of the debate. I have a lot of respect for Mr. Bradford. I do have some concerns with the whole issue of shifting the resources to another department. I get the whole issue with regards to being under one shop or one roof. Talk to me a little about the pollution control issue, because I'm concerned about that right there, and how that's going to work or not work specifically.
I think I'm going to have to echo what Senator Padilla stated as to the focus of these RPS penalties is as it relates to renewable and not necessarily to the air pollution issue. So I wasn't really looking to address that, but making sure that these funds are going to make sure we address and enforce those who are non-compliant with the renewable standards of 33%.
Okay.
And Senator, I understand your concerns, as I understood Senator Simitian's, and I'm willing to work with this committee and making sure that there's clarifying language to make sure that there's no double jeopardy. As Senator Berryhill stated, I don't think it creates a double jeopardy for penalty if you're in compliance. I mean, no public utility runs the risk of being fined by either ARB or CEC if they're in compliance. And that's what the whole goal of the whole RPS issue is, to make sure that people are in compliance of meeting the 33%. The penalty only comes in if you're not meeting those goals.
So let me and through the chair, either the author or the author, if you will, of the RPS measure that would just codify into law, you are aware, right, that it does chapter out portions of your RPS measure?
I think the staff analysis, as I skimmed through it, does raise that issue, yes.
Okay, and because I'm trying to eat my sandwich and get down here as quickly as possible, you are a no on this issue. Am I correct?
I am, but I want to...
the reason why I say that, because I want to underscore that was one of the softest no's, you know.
Yeah, I want to underscore... this is going to seem a little odd. I want to underscore again, the approach that Mr. Bradford's brought forward is a reasonable approach. It's not the one I support, but there's more than one way to do it. As I said earlier, I think the better course is to stay with the approach that we've got, because CEC has a role to play, which, as I said earlier, was one that DWP pressed for earlier in the conversation before they had a change of heart. And I also think that the ARB has a role to play. They both have a role to play in this issue. CEC does not now have penalty authority. This is a change. Doesn't mean you can't make the change, and Mr. Bradford obviously thinks we should make the change if I can. But just we sort of need to understand that's a bit of a new bridge to cross. And with respect to all the people who weighed in about the penalties aren't supposed to be for this or for that, to pick up, taking a slightly different direction. As Mr. Bradford says, the penalties are supposed to be to encourage you to follow the law. The goal of the penalties is to say, hey, do what you're supposed to do. So I don't want to be viewing the penalties as a revenue source for anybody. I want to view the penalties as a deterrent to bad behavior with respect to the bill, and that's where I am. But again, I think I wouldn't presume to speak for the chairman, Mr. Bradford, but I think we both say, look, he's got a slightly different take on what the best way to do this is than I do, or than we had in the bill. And we're revisiting this, and this is exactly what should be happening, as frustrating as it is to the members. We're trying to keep the non-controversial items in a cleanup bill, and where there is a debate of this sort, we're trying to have the debate on the merits on each individual case, and this is exactly the conversation I think we should be having. So,
again, one of the things that through the chair is a little concerning is obviously the timing issue, and I don't know if Mr. DeSania had brought that up before I got here. The timing issue is giving me some consternation. I will say this on the issue of pollution control. Again, I want to underscore one of my concerns is that the bureaucracy. And this is an issue I want to be very clear about, so there's no ambiguity. I'm going to be on top of this one next year. I think the chair is giving a yes recommendation, I believe, Mr. Chair. And but I'm going to follow this very, very closely next year. And I would only say that Mr. Bradford, and I guess the rest of all of us, if only people who oppose our measures would be as reasonable, as kind-hearted as Mr. Simidian, this would be a much better world.
Any other questions, comments from committee? Senator Strickland?
I just want to follow up, deep respect for the author, but, the concern about the double jeopardy, yes, they are, you're right, you're correct if they're out of compliance, but what Senator Simidian carried forward was a very strong goal from California to get the 33%. I'm one of the few Republicans that actually supported that because I believe in that goal. However, I do see some barriers on getting to that 33% that we don't give the energy companies or the public-owned utilities the tools to get there. And for them to be able to now get double jeopardy, and that will just be passed on to the ratepayers, is very concerning to me. And so you're correct, they don't pay those fines, but I don't want to be part of a bill that has double jeopardy for the same violation, just because, especially when one of the agencies can use it as a way to, it's not specific in where that money's going, and so therefore I am not supportive of this bill today, but I think it can be cleaned up, and I don't see the sense of urgency to get it done in these last 2 days of session, and we can bring this back come January next year.
Senator, I understand your concerns, and I would just make the commitment to, as this bill moves forward, if it moves out of this committee today, to address your concerns as it reaches the floor. So that's my commitment on that.
Any final questions, comments? Is there a motion? Senator Pavley moves to bill. Let's call the roll.
Motion is the measure to be returned to the Senate floor for consideration. Senator Padilla?
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Fuller? Berryhill? Berryhill, no. Corbett? Corbett, no. De Leon? Aye. De Leon, aye. DeSaunier? Pavley? Pavley, aye. Rubio? Aye. Rubio, aye. Simidian? Simidian, no. Strickland? No. Strickland, no. Wright? 1, 2, 3, 4. Fuller, no. Fuller, no. It needs to.
Let's call the absent members.
How are things going?
Let's call the absent members, please.
DeSaunier? Aye. DeSaunier, aye. Wright?
Okay, I believe everybody in the room has cast their vote. We'll place the bill on call. I'm happy to hang out for a few minutes if we can locate Senator Wright to bring finality one way or the other to this item. I'll give it a couple of minutes. This committee is still in session? Mr. Strickland, you may want to advise the folks you're talking to that they don't want to hurt their chances here. You may want to advise the folks you're talking to they don't want to hurt their chances here. Let's call the absent members. Please lift the call and call the absent members.
Wright.
This would be your turn.
Berryhill, no to aye.
Without Senator Wright, that bill now has sufficient votes. That bill is out. Thank you all very much. This hearing is adjourned.
I'll be right back.